There are many video game items that are iconic, instantly recognizable, a part of the very fabric of a game's identity. Mario's mushroom, Cloud's Buster Sword, the physical Elder Scrolls, the Triforce of Legend of Zelda. But if you ask me, there are very few virtual objects that are as integral to the gameplay experience, the design of the setting, and the methods of storytelling of a given franchise, quite like Fallout's famous wrist-affixed personal computer known simply as the Pip-Boy. A large, metallic, television-esque watch device that sits firmly on your player character's arm in any given adventure taking place in the post-apocalyptic wasteland. From the earliest days of Fallout 1 up to today, Robco Industries' personal information processor has acted as not only your character's map and personal radio to listen to some Marty Robbins while you're bashing fools' heads in, but it's also pretty much your entire user interface, vital signs, inventory management, statistics, quest log, and so many other little things. In a hostile, radiated, and dangerous world, this hefty, soft-glowing piece of old-world tech really is your most reliable companion. But the Pip-Boy is also a very clever piece of video game design, in my opinion one of the best ever. An incredibly creative way, especially in the more modern Fallout titles, to kind of seamlessly bring your character into these menus without really breaking immersion, an object that has become so popular over the history of this franchise that fans have taken to making their own, and Bethesda has even tried several times to bring this thing to life in various, sometimes less than inspired ways. But beyond the sort of practical legacy of this item, the Pip-Boy also has a very interesting backstory within the Fallout universe, with tons of different models and makes that we have seen and interacted with across the nearly 30-year history of Fallout. So my friends, welcome to the Itempedia, and today I want to learn everything about this Pip-Boy and puzzle out just how it has become one of the most beloved polygonal objects of the century thus far. But before we continue, I would like to take a moment to recognize all of my incredible patrons who help me out so much by supporting away from YouTube. You guys really are my favorite. I am Ghost, your host as always. Now, let's go ahead, sit back, and relax as we tackle the first ever episode of the Itempedia. The most logical place to start with the Pip-Boy is with some lore and in-universe context, because I find it to be very important that we all understand the full implications of the player character having a piece of technology like this, because the truth of the matter is there are very few others in these games also equipped with a Pip-Boy. Well, the story of this item starts years before the Great War, before nuclear devastation, before the world was irreversibly changed. When Vault-Tec, a large American defense corporation, was contracted by the US government to create fallout shelters known as, well, the vaults, all over the country. Now, if you're a fan of the series, you probably know the deal here, but these vaults were far more than just a measure to save lives in the event of nuclear holocaust, because many of them were also like strange and or sadistic social or even medical experiments being conducted by Vault-Tec, with the dwellers being the unfortunate guinea pigs. So if you were lucky enough to be spared from instant disintegration, you had a pretty high chance of being subjected to some pretty twisted living conditions. Well, all that aside, when Vault-Tec was first designing these shelters, they did create certain structures and norms that were somewhat consistent across all of the vaults. A sort of uniformity of strict rules, clear roles, official apparel that we recognize as the famous blue jumpsuits, and of course, a single piece of technology granted to every single dweller in every vault, an official Pip-Boy. Well, the out-of-the-box function of this wrist-worn contraption was, well, you could essentially think of it like a smartphone, a true personal computer, a device that enabled everyone to record and track personal information about their lives and their health. A little bit of a digital Swiss Army knife, because Pip-Boys could act as diaries, organizers, entertainment, a means of communication, the list goes on and on. A biotechnical extension of each person and a piece of technology that all of these people would come to rely on heavily in everyday vault life. Each one was housed in a pretty industrial metal shell functioning off an operating system that was simply known as Pip-OS. But even though this whole thing was a Vault-Tec operation, they as a company actually did not develop nor design the Pip-Boy. It was, in fact, another massive pre-war corporation known as Robco, founded by Robert House, a character very well known from his starring role in Fallout New Vegas. Well, Robco and Vault-Tec had always had this close working partnership, and Robco for years had been developing this kind of personal computer thing, but decided to collaborate with their brother company to bring these early models to these vaults as they were being constructed. But during this time, the Pip-Boy was being developed rapidly, which is why some vaults had older models and others were given more cutting-edge revisions, which I find to be a very fun lore way to kind of justify the functionality of the Pip-Boy improving as these games came out in real life. But the Pip-Boys were really made for this initial purpose, serving the lucky few who were selected to survive the nuclear war, and we can assume that they were kept, maintained, possibly even improved within these communities of each vault, and then passed down to the next generation when a wielder would pass away. But I gotta say, that we as the player learn that in the far future, after many of these vaults have been opened, the Pip-Boys also have a multitude of different invaluable uses when it comes to the next step for humanity, surviving in the brutal reality of this new ruined world. Now listen, I totally buy the backstory and the usage of the Pip-Boy we just covered. It seems super straightforward and fits very neatly into the overall lore of Fallout. But holy smokes, when we the player get our hands on one of these puppies, you finally get the sense of how powerful they actually are. I mean, I can't imagine roaming the wasteland without a Pip-Boy. The automatic inventory sorting, the VAT system tracking all the stats and missions, protecting you from radiation. I mean, this single item turns you from just another chump into a damn superhero. So, I have always wondered, how does this thing even work? This clunky, shitty CRT just like magically understands my nervous system and personhood? It seems like a miracle. Well, I'm about to hit you with a truth bomb, baby. How the Pip-Boy actually physically functions has long been left mysterious. And that is because the Pip-Boy is nothing more than a gameplay convention.
What?
I mean, the story of this world attempts to contextualize it. We just saw that, which I love and I think it works. But this thing is first and foremost an item for the player and the player alone to wield and be assisted by during their time with the gameplay. Fallout uses this iconic diegetic interface to keep you immersed in the world when you enter what would traditionally just be a sort of pause screen. And this extends to some of the other many functions of the Pip-Boy. I mean, it's a Geiger counter, a radio, it can play holotapes, play back conversations for you, detect radiation in drink or food, and automatically keeps a map of your character's travels. And all of that is either just necessary RPG stuff that would be on a tab in any given pause menu, or maybe functions that could have come from other items, but instead, Fallout wraps everything together into this nice home base object right on your wrist that is the Pip-Boy. I recall even hearing a close friend back in high school refer to it as his Excel spreadsheet, which is funny, but it essentially is. It's simply a document of everything regarding your adventure in one cool as hell package. But I do want to go back and talk about VATS for a moment, or the Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System. Now this is one of the things that for a lot of people makes Fallout Fallout. The ability to slow time or stop it entirely and target certain limbs, weak points on enemies, etc. to kind of cripple them and add an extra bit of strategy to the combat. Well, this entire thing within the lore comes from the Pip-Boy, and as you can imagine, this would make someone with a Pip-Boy significantly more dangerous when compared to your common Wastelander. But just like the device, there is absolutely no explanation given on how this functions at all. Literally, it's stated that the science of how VATS works has been lost to time, which is very convenient for Bethesda. But I honestly can't imagine a way that this could be scientifically explained in-universe without it just sounding goofy as hell. You know, it's a video game. This is one of those suspension of disbelief mechanics, and that's that. Just have fun with it. But it's also important to remember that it wasn't something really present in the older turn-based games, but limb targeting was, so Bethesda really just invented VATS to try to emulate that experience in the modern age. But anyway, I mean, how do you think the Pip-Boy works? If you were paid to kind of come up with an in-universe explanation, is it somehow surgically linked to you? Is it using some sort of quantum biometric reading through your arm? Let me know your ideas down below. I love seeing you guys share your thoughts on stuff like this. So I think we have established that the Pip-Boy is a very niche and powerful product in the Fallout world. I mean, kept very hush-hush under the Vault program, and overall, there are probably very few that were made and circulated. So then you have to wonder, how is it that we, the player, always end up with one? I mean, these games are taking place many years after the bombs drop, sometimes hundreds of years, and you add in the scale of the US, and one would think that this is an extremely rare piece of technology to come across. Well then, let's have a little look at how the player acquires their very own Pip-Boy in each of the mainline games, and I think you're going to very quickly notice a bit of a pattern. So starting off with the OG Fallout, you play as a character known literally as the Vault Dweller, and you grew up in Vault 13, about a generation or so after the war. So the Pip-Boy you have, well, it's been yours your entire life, man, straight from the source. But in Fallout 2, you are the former protagonist's grandchild and actually grow up in this sort of nomadic tribal village to the north that your grandparent founded. But guess what? You inherit the very same Pip-Boy from the original game, and you go on your merry way. In Fallout 3, the protagonist also grows up within a vault, Vault 101 in the DC area, and this time it's like 200 years after the war. But we actually get to see and experience firsthand the moment that you are gifted your Pip-Boy on your 10th birthday, which is like a big landmark thing. These other kids are mad jealous, dude, I'm telling you, within the vaults, these things were like the newest iPhones. But in Fallout New Vegas, things are a little bit different for the first time. You are no Vault Dweller, and in fact, you are nothing but a common delivery guy. So this Pip-Boy finds its way to you via Doc Mitchell, a character in the opening who saves your life after you get shot in the head. Now Doc grew up in Vault 21 and sees this Pip-Boy as something that could really help you out personally on your quest, and he seems to have no plan of ever leaving Good Springs again, so shout out to Doc, thank you. A Fallout 4's protagonist called the Sole Survivor is also a bit of a unique one. I mean, this is a Vault Dweller, but actually an original Vault Dweller from the pre-war times who was cryogenically frozen right as the bombs were dropping. But upon waking up 200 or so years later and wandering out of the vault, you find a Pip-Boy on a dead scientist on the ground and make it your very own. Then finally, in Fallout 76, you are a resident of, well, Vault 76, man, alongside all the other players playing this game. And this one actually takes place 20 to 30 short years after the Great War, and your Pip-Boy is waiting for you shortly after character creation. So, as you can see, we almost always embody someone with an extremely close tie to one of these vaults, which I think makes a ton of sense. This is the only way to do it. You want the main character of a game like this to be exiting their safe haven and entering this wide, wild world, ignorant to all of its malintent and mysteries, just like we are. But in that very vein, you see how the Pip-Boy is this physical staple, a constant, a part of the core formula for Fallout that tells you in some way that you are important, man. That with the help of this single item, you can make an impact on the world, but the impact you make is totally up to you. So I have mentioned a few times that the Pip-Boys were released in waves along with the creation of the vaults. So there's a handful of models that improved on the previous ones, and each of them has a very unique look and identity. And I do think it's safe to assume, with the amount of games we have played in this franchise and the scale of the United States, we have seen just a small number of potential Pip-Boy models. But let's now run it back and go through all these different Pip-Boy models and see what all makes them unique. So chronologically speaking, the first Pip-Boy we see anywhere in-game is the Pip-Boy 1.0. Now, this appears in the Fallout 4 opening cutscene, and as you can see, it's massive, man, and very crude, with this 16-button physical keypad, these exposed switches, wires, lights, and a single dial. Absolutely a prototype Pip-Boy here, just meant to show that the tech was being developed in this old world, a time of scientific prosperity, which is so cool. So next up is of course the original Pip-Boy of Fallout 1 and 2, the Pip-Boy 2000. Now this is described as a cumbersome wrist-mounted device utilizing cathode ray tube monitors in green monochrome high resolution. And this thing has all the bells and whistles we've been talking about, man. Auto-mapping your travels, tracking assignments, managing your inventory, etc. But very uniquely, this is also what we see all conversations happening through in these games. I mean, all those iconic talking heads, every encounter with big-time characters like the Master and Frank Horrigan, look at the UI. You are experiencing the world through the Pip-Boy. And it definitely has a kind of rugged look to it, it's rusty, there's a funky version of Vault Boy known as Vault Boy 2000, which is like Robco's own version of the mascot with fiery hair and this futuristic jumpsuit. But this 2000 model did have several revisions, and Fallout 76 features one of those in the Pip-Boy 2000 Mark VI. Now here, we see all that exposed tubes and vintage looking design still, but it seems the overall form factor has been shrunk down to the more streamlined later models. Additionally, this is the first Pip-Boy we see chronologically that has an actual Geiger counter, which I think would be a very key feature for anyone coming out of Vault 76, because these folks were tasked with leaving their vault early on and repopulating Appalachia. But probably the most famous iteration period of this item is the Pip-Boy 3000, baby, found in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Now you can already tell just by looking at it, it's way more slim and sleek as far as design. There's no exposed tubes, there's not an overly boxy screen. It fits much more seamlessly into the natural form of a person's arm. However, I gotta say, they moved the dial over to the left, which makes no sense ergonomically, bro.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
But, you know, this is the first Pip-Boy we ever saw as fans in the 3D era of the franchise, so I think this will always be the most iconic version for so many of us. It just introduced most of the features we have come to associate with the Pip-Boy, like the flashlight and the ability to actually change the color of the text display away from that familiar green. But actually in New Vegas, the default color is like this amber, which I think fits the aesthetics of that game very well. And here, the Pip-Boy does have some additional features, like showing the couriers standing with different factions, weapon modding, and in hardcore mode, displays various survival stats necessary to track. Also, I gotta mention it, this is the game with the best Pip-Boy attainable period in the franchise, the Pip-Boy 3 billion. Oh shit, a blinged out variant of your 3000 encrusted with some fat ass diamonds, son. Now this is a purely aesthetic change and nothing more, and it's attainable through a little side quest surrounding a certain gun salesman and a deal with a certain crime family. I just love this thing so much, it's so stupid. And finally, we have kind of the ultimate version of the Pip-Boy we have gotten to see and use to date, which is the 3000 Mark IV. From what else but Fallout 4. Now, I do think this is probably the best overall design of the lot. The dial here is thankfully moved back to the right, and we actually get to see our character's fingers clicking through those various menus, which is very satisfying and adds a lot to the immersion, of course. Also, up to this point, the Pip-Boys have been part of a sort of glove that actually covers the entire hand and forearm, while here, it's just this simple cushioned latch that seems pretty easily removable. Now, everything else here is the same as far as functionality, but there is the added flavor of some animated images in the UI, which I think is very nice, but a huge addition here is what is referred to as the adapter plug on the underside of the Pip-Boy, which is essentially like a skeleton key, allowing the owner to freely unlock and lock all of the vaults in the Commonwealth area as they please. This also can be used to hack into rogue robots and gain control of them if you have the right perks. Also, this puppy can play mini games, boy hell yeah. But it's also worth noting that there were a few more Pip-Boys planned to make their debut in the 2003 canceled original version of Fallout 3 from Black Isle Studios known as Fallout Van Buren. So front and center, it would have featured the original Pip-Boy 3000 as your main interface in the Wasteland with some general improvements over Fallout 2's, as well as something called the Super Pip-Boy, which would have been a completely unique variant worn by Victor Presper, the NCR-affiliated mad scientist that would have acted as the primary antagonist of this game. Now who knows if we were going to be able to acquire the Super Pip-Boy, but damn. I mean, every time Van Buren stuff is brought up, it just hurts, dude. I feel like this could have been one of the GOATs. Well, in the intro to this video, I mentioned that the Pip-Boy has become so popular over the years that many people at home in their own little workshops have decided to craft incredible replicas with varying levels of functionality. I urge you, just Google them and enjoy. There's some really cool stuff. Also, yes, of course, there are some official replicas and accessories that have really resonated with fans, and others that did feel kinda cheap garbage, but hey, that's capitalism, baby. It's just one of those fantastical things, you know, kind of like the lightsaber from Star Wars or the Blade Runner pistol, things that fans who love this franchise want to see in the real world and enjoy firsthand. I mean, I want one, don't you? And then beyond the physical stuff, fans have also rendered up all sorts of fun Pip-Boy ideas that could feasibly fit into the Fallout world in the future, as well as tons of mods for the existing Fallout games. Transforming the Pip-Boy in different ways, bringing the older models to the modern games, and so many other fun and interesting things. And right now, as of early 2024, the Pip-Boy has even made it onto several official Magic the Gathering cards, which is the definition of iconic, son. I just can't wait to see how they make this thing work in the new Fallout TV show. It'll be very interesting. Listen guys, there are so many types of video games and even more types of video game items. They are the tools with which we are given to interact with these virtual worlds, ways to express ourselves and explore the full potential of any given video game's mechanics and setting. The Pip-Boy takes all these things that are ever present in the RPG genre and throws them into an all-in-one kind of interface device that fits seamlessly into the visual style of the franchise. Honestly, I would even say the Pip-Boy has crafted a large portion of the visual style of Fallout. That monochrome green, the rugged old world tech, the smiling face of Vault Boy showing you that your legs are completely shattered. That is what playing these games is all about. Fallout has always leaned heavily on world building, storytelling, and really high quality writing. The wasteland itself is a place that is trying to kill you constantly. An oppressive, bleak, and at times really depressing game world with constant reminders of the evil within the common man. But you know what? That's just fine. Because no matter where your adventures take you, you can rest assured you are never roaming this landscape alone. I mean, it just wouldn't be Fallout without your trusty Pip-Boy. Thank you everyone for watching and or listening to the very end. Please, please, please let me know other items you guys would want to see videos on just like this, and any feedback regarding this brand new series on the channel. I had a ton of fun putting this one together, and I can't wait to see how the Pip-Boy is expanded and developed in Fallout 5 and in the future. Well, dude, that's all for today. Thank you again so much for watching, and until next time, my friends, peace.